Anodyne 2, Return to Dust, is incredible. I know I've said this before, but my favorite aspect of interacting with other media is being able to see the work and art of the person or people behind them. And playing through Anodyne 2 has really awoken that feeling for me. How beautiful and unique games can be. No matter how many years go by, creative minds will always be able to express their lives in something truly fresh, something truly special that amidst the conversations of media boredom stands in its own world, uncaring and shining. Anodyne 2 is one of the most prime examples of that. Anodyne 2 was released back in 2019, once more by the duo at Analgesic Productions, Melos Hantani and Marina Kitaka. While its title suggests a continuation of the original Anodyne, I'd say it's very much so a sequel in essence. While there are plenty of callbacks and Easter eggs, it's still very much so a game that can be played without knowledge of the previous one. Though you should still play Anodyne 1 anyways, because that game's dope, and the references here are fun. The game has us taking the role of a newly created nano cleaner named Nova, who has been given the task by an entity known as the Center to free New the Land from the ever-growing dust. Yes, New the Land. Play Anodyne 1, it makes sense. As a nano cleaner, Nova must explore New the Land and find those who have been infected by the dust, where she then utilizes her nanospark to spark a connection with said person or object, shrinking inside them and then saving them from the dust. All the while, collecting cards and dust in order to fill up the prism in the center, enabling an event that will save all from this ever-approaching dust. While how things end up playing will change throughout the game with some major shakeups, starting out, that's the gist of things. And trust me, this game still very much so retains its distinctiveness. Like when I said Nova is a newly created nano cleaner, I mean, the game starts with you breaking Nova out of her egg by gathering ingredients. I can't say I've played many games that start like that. A major aspect of Anodyne 2 relies in its myriad of characters, that we get to go in, see their inner thoughts, views on themselves, others, the witnesses and causes of events that led to these points. Being able to interact and learn of what these characters hold dear and keep to themselves is what I believe to be a lot of the heart of Anodyne 2. Outside of the more major save the world plot and all the revelations that result from that, is the beauty of all these smaller moments and characters that make Anodyne 2 what it is. If y'all have been paying attention so far, you would notice that this game has both an appearance of a 2D and 3D game. I think both sides look absolutely fantastic. I enjoyed the pixel art of Anodyne 1, but all of the colorful 2D worlds in Anodyne 2 can truly be mesmerizing. Even in the top-down view that would normally focus more on showing the ground, the direction of these areas allow for so many moments of seeing the sky, looking from above, and just always being visually interesting. I love Anodyne 1, but if you show me areas like all the caves or the Red Sea, I do start to sweat a bit, like, hey, let's head back to the beach or the cliffs. I feel pretty similar to the 3D aspect of the game. It has this sort of low poly retro look, as y'all can see, but it doesn't personally feel like it's interested in capturing anything from that era. Like, of course, this choice was a deliberate aesthetical choice, but it never felt like to me it was trying to pander to any sort of nostalgia, rather than use the advantage of the style to try something new and create a world and characters that could only work with a style like this. I think I've said it before that these kind of graphics really make for a world that we can separate from our own just because of how vast and different it is, that we can so easily accept it as alien and different. If the 2D world seen when nanoporting into the characters had me staring, the 3D worlds had me actively sitting and just vibing at some very nice and pleasant environments. I think this game really represents aspects I love both about 3D and 2D art styles, in a way that makes me glad that art like this can exist, and others have similar views to mine of what we enjoy from differing styles. Despite the two modes of play looking very different from one another, they work so well in tandem to always keep things fresh. Going to a new area, whether 2D or 3D, is always exciting in this game. And the music? Once again by Melos Hantani, with a bonus track from R23X and Equip, which, wow, was not expecting to see Equip's name on this game, but hearing the song, yeah, I see it. So, yeah, gonna be real, this is one of my favorite video game soundtracks I've heard in a while. So many incredible songs, punctuated and made for impactful moments. Like, there's a song that only plays while you're in your car form driving on this road. It makes every moment and scene of this game feel special. Every 2D area in this game has its own theme to represent the people you're in and the life they're living. I could play a handful of the songs that I enjoyed, but to even choose a few tracks from this game would be a disgrace to the rest of the soundtrack. There is no choice, they're all good. I guess if I had to describe it, I'd say a good amount of the songs in this game are just dreamy, relaxing. Playing this game and listening to this music is healing to me, but it's also so emotional. Perfectly utilizing instruments to convey certain scenarios, characters' emotions, and the world at large. It's just so incredibly well done. And the non-reusing of tracks makes every area, every event, feel important. These songs have hearts. And no words I could say would ever do this soundtrack justice. It's just something that you should experience. As for the gameplay this time around, let's start with the far less complicated 3D gameplay. This is what you would expect from a 3D game like this. As Nova, you can walk around, perform a double jump, and even a float. I guess you could tell I really never played Anodyne 2 when I called the game a 3D platformer back in my Anodyne 1 video, because it's a tad rare that you have to use any of these abilities. Like, yes, there are moments where you need to jump to certain areas, but most of the time the 3D gameplay is a means to reach the more prominent 2D gameplay. I think the 3D gameplay is to give more scale to the world, allow the player to separate the inside Zelda-like dungeon worlds of these characters with the actual vast world that they live in. Instead of tight platforming challenges, most of the 3D gameplay is simply talking to other characters and using your Nova Spark to enter them. I mean, there is a whole minigame you play before entering someone, but I wouldn't call that the most complex thing. Speaking of moving around the world, Nova can transform herself into a car, which greatly increases her speed. This is the main way that you'll travel around the world, and it's pretty breezy. Well, I mean, unless if I'm the one driving. Thank God nobody else is on this road because I'm hitting this shit like it's twisted metal. Sure, you'll end up driving through the same areas several times, but I'd much rather prefer this over than just slapping a fast travel system on the game like, problem solved. That's the kind of stuff that hinders worlds for me. Just give me some nice connected areas, some fast movement, and good jams to reflect on as I go from location to location. Just clicking a map button and watching the screen fade to black as I teleport around is so mechanical. I like when games have the faith to allow me to view their art, instead of being afraid of me getting bored or something, because the journey in itself can still be exciting. I'll never outwardly call out a game that utilizes fast travel as a negative, but I'll always think of it. It's a band-aid in a world of possible solutions. Sorry, I'm ranting. But no location in Anodyne 2 feels more than like a minute or two away, while still allowing the world to be so vast, to still have every area be important and distinct. The 2D areas in Anodyne 2 are where things truly get creative. It does sort of follow that formula from Anodyne 1 of these being dungeons where you need to grab keys and clear rooms. But Anodyne 2 has a number of introductions that set itself pretty far apart. First of all, the way the player attacks in this game. Being, well, a dust cleaner, Nova uses a vacuum cleaner. The vacuum cleaner can be used to suck up various objects and enemies, where they can then be shot back out. Whilst Anodyne 1 had a mix of combat and puzzle rooms, I'd say Anodyne 2 is largely focused on solving puzzles, but in like, the very best way possible. Watching the way enemies interact with one another, finding ways to use the vacuum cleaner to attack out of reach enemies or traverse the level. It's actually pretty incredible how much is accomplished with such a simple moveset. Every 2D area is completely unique from one another, up to the very end. They all have a distinct mechanic that's expanded on throughout the dungeon, and once that dungeon is over, you never see it again. It truly is such an explosion of creativity from the devs to create a game that is ever changing and embracing of its potential, to continuously make the gameplay interesting, fun, and thought-provoking. A truly content-rich 6 to 8 hours of a game that is packed with so many cool ideas, you'll never know what to expect when entering a 2D area, and that's so exciting. It's simple, done masterfully. The most the player gains throughout the journey is the ability to shoot out nano sparks, but instead of adding on in complexity through large movesets or mechanics, the game instead shows us all the ways the idea we learned from the beginning of the vacuum can be presented, played around, and remixed with. There's not a single puzzle or mechanic in a dungeon I didn't like or didn't eventually understand. Once again, your options are so few that it always seems possible to solve any room, because you know what tools you have at your disposal, and it always made me so excited to go into a new 2D area and see how it's being remixed this time around. It's truly fantastic. The structure of this game is pretty open, not in the way of the more sequence-breaky Anodyne 1, but in the way that the game is split into areas, each area having a number of cards you need to collect, within people or by exploring the world. These cards can be collected in any order, and once a number of them have been gathered, the dust which was previously blocking off an area will now be accessible, allowing for a new open map to explore and find cards within. Whatever order you wish as well, simply depending on which paths you decide to head down and the characters you end up meeting along the way. I do admit, I think the first 8 cards are sort of the weaker parts of the game, not even close to bad. It's just that after the first 8 cards, I suddenly found myself getting very interested in the story and world as it fully opens. And it's also where that sort of uniqueness of Analgesic Studios comes to play. But I think my opinion is only like this because of my other problem with the game, which, much like the previous, is very strange and opinionated. I may be alone on this. This is kind of weird. It may just be a thing with me in games. It's a very nebulous feeling thing. While playing this game, my previous fears were founded, and I was sort of sad that the game was lagging a bit while driving around and exploring the world. I even turned on the 60 FPS lock, and hopefully that would help, right? A part of me just figured that I wouldn't be able to run the game whilst recording due to my weak hardware, but the more I played the game, the more I began to have a different idea of what was happening. Then I turned on the FPS viewer and saw that I was always at 60 FPS. Then I watched someone else's playthrough and saw the same sort of weird stutter that happens whilst exploring the world, especially by car. I know y'all are probably thinking, Spacey, I don't see shit. And honestly, you might not be able to. This could all just be made up. I could be losing my mind. But it's like the camera just gets stuck or something. Like, this game is struggling to be a 3D game. I eventually got used to this, I think. But for the first 2 sessions I had with this game, I just felt so sick. Like, this actually messed with my motion sickness. And I'm not sure if I understood why, or if me with the camera farther accentuated this. But playing this game sort of just made me feel like I was going to keel over. Like I said, very nebulous, personal, strange, and maybe not even real. But it did make quite a bit of the car travel pretty unpleasant for me. So in other words, if the only problems I have with this game is stuff that random, then I think we're in the good. Because despite that, I still enjoyed every second of this game. I found the story and characters pretty amazing by the end. Like, the gameplay always kept me invested, showing new ideas to constantly reinvent the mechanics I knew in interesting ways, all in such an absolutely beautiful looking and sounding world. Playing Anodyne 2 really allowed me to appreciate Analgesic's views on games. A lot of the humor and stuff can be pretty self-aware, which arguably isn't sort of my thing. Not all misses, I still think about the rooting reflex line, but if y'all watched enough of my vids, you know I'm a stick in the mud, so, you know, fair play. However, there is a lot of that sorta, dare I say, meta aspect to the game I really appreciate, and I feel like you can't talk about Anodyne 2 without talking about it. Like, Anodyne 1's post-game of being able to glitch around the map was always so cool and strange, straight up one of the coolest post-games ever. Meanwhile in Anodyne 2, I'm halfway through the game and I'm already visiting debug rooms. The concept of exploring debug rooms and reading developer commentary throughout the world is canonized within the game, with its collectible of meta coins, which can be spent at the meta shop to unlock these locations and developer commentary points. And I'm certain I have not played a game that has just allowed you to visit the debug rooms in the middle of the story and have it actually be a gameplay feature and plot point. Like, that's what I mean when I say these games are special. Mello's Hantani and Marina Kataka's views on games and art is so fascinating and unique. Perhaps I was shallow to assume that Anodyne 2's post-game would be the same as Anodyne 1, allowing the player to just no-clip around the world. But no, they found their own way to do things. Then again, little did I know, I could have been exploring out of bounds in Anodyne 2 the whole time. Just with a few well-placed jumps, it's possible to reach areas out of the map, and potentially intentionally unintentionally, which sounds pretty familiar to me. But that is why I love Anodyne 2 so much. It's hard to believe that there are people so unknowing to say games have become boring and unoriginal, when right under their noses are gems like Anodyne 2, exploring and embracing strange and fun ideas unlike any piece of media I have ever experienced. It's something that exists in every facet of Anodyne 2, from the gameplay with the vacuum, the very interesting story setup, to once again the meta worlds, all adding to what makes Anodyne 2 so fantastic, what has made me respect Analgesic games so much. They have a style, a flair that's distinct to them. And as long as I keep finding that in games, as long as I keep finding creators like Mello's Hantani and Marina Kataka, then I know that there will always be rooms for games to be special, room for this art to be beautiful, to be inspiring. It's a game that only got better the more I played it, with an ending and final battle I really enjoyed. Seriously, the switching of the musical tracks for the final boss and the song in general was so great. Anodyne 2 really is a game that exceeds in every regard. I love the visuals, I love the soundtrack, the gameplay constantly reinventing and changing how you see the base mechanics of the game over and over is truly impressive. And it felt like the creators could still come up with so many more ideas with the vacuum cleaners. It seemed infinite. Yeah, Anodyne 2 is incredible. Once again, I believe this is a game that so many people would love if they knew about. A product purely made from the love and passion of creating art. It'll always be games like these that I embrace. These are the games that inspire me, show me the full beauty only found within indie games. The art that can be created and expressed from colorful minds unleashed to its full potential. These are the kind of games that give me hope. If I showed anything here today that interested you, then consider playing through Anodyne 2. A game that truly gripped me and allowed me to explore some absolutely fantastic worlds. Links in the description as always. I'm Spacey Soundy, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Special shoutouts to Golly Gamer tier supporter, Ken Chiago. If anyone else would like to see my videos a week earlier like these people here, consider supporting me by becoming a channel member. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to play games like these again. I hope y'all have a wonderful day. I'm out of here. Also, I know it may seem like I'm just going to jump into Sephony for the next video, but I think it's actually pretty wise if I take a little break and do a few videos before I do the Sephony video, because I don't want to jump right into Sephony right after beating Anodyne 2. I want time for that game to breathe within me, so just be patient if you're waiting for Sephony, alright?